I want to start with a brief film clip. It's from a Charlie Chaplin film. And just what's happening is... No, it's okay. Okay. The setup for that, so it makes a little more sense maybe, is that Chaplin's his character's an escaped convict who steals the clothing of a pastor, arrives in a train in a new town, and they think he's the pastor that's supposed to be, their new pastor is supposed to be arriving, so they rush into the church, and he has to somehow present a service with no knowledge of how you do it. So that's how he gets into this whole thing. So we have the story of David and Goliath, and I'm not going to go to the scriptures for the story because we're all familiar with it. I think Chaplin's account of it pretty well covers it without any words at all. So what's the theme of this story? Well, you could say that it's the triumph of the underdog, and of course in Chaplin's performance you sure see that, the comparison of the giant and the small person certainly would be an example of the underdog. You could look at it that way, but I think a better theme would be to say God is in control. Because how did this boy, David, manage to defeat this huge person? Well, through the power of God. And we have this theme really throughout the Bible. One way we see this is that God chooses leaders that don't seem to be appropriate as leaders, and he does this repeatedly throughout the Bible. I just have a couple of examples, a few examples here. One of them is Moses. Now, of course, we think of Moses from the movie The Ten Commandments, and he's quite a powerful speaker, but in fact, Moses claimed he really wasn't a very good speaker. In Exodus, 4th chapter, beginning with the 10th verse, we'll read this. Then Moses said to the Lord, "Please, Lord, I've never been eloquent, neither recently, nor in time past, nor since thou hast spoken to thy servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." And the Lord said to him, "Who has made man's mouth? Or who makes him dumb or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, the Lord? Now then go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say." But he said, Please, Lord, now send a message by whomever thou wilt. And the anger of the Lord burned against Moses, and he said, Is there not your brother Aaron the Levite? I know that he speaks fluently. And moreover, behold, he is coming out to meet you. When he sees you, he will be glad in his heart, and you are to speak to him and put the words in his mouth. And I, even I, will be with your mouth and his mouth, and I will teach you whatever you are to do. Moreover, he shall speak for you to the people, and it shall come about that he shall be as a mouth for you, and you shall be as God to him. So again, here's Moses who claims, well, I'm not really a very good speaker. I don't want to do this. And God says, I'm in control, and we'll work it out. Another example of an unlikely leader, Gideon. And I read about this in Judges. Now, the Gideon, one thing should be pointed out before the part that I want to read here is he's been threshing his wheat to save it from Midianites. He's kind of scared of the Midianites. And here he is doing all this stuff, just a normal guy. And along comes an angel of the Lord, speaking for God, representative of God, and says, greets him as, O mighty warrior. And here's this guy, mighty warrior? Who am I as a mighty warrior? So we'll pick it up in Judges 6 at the 11th verse. Then the angel of the Lord came and sat under the oak that was in Ophrah, which belonged to Joash the Abiezrite, and his son Gideon was beating out wheat in the winepress in order to save it from the Midianites. And the angel of the Lord appeared to him and said to him, The Lord is with you, O valiant warrior. Then Gideon said to him, O my Lord, if the Lord is with us, why then has all this happened to us? And where are all his miracles which our fathers told us about, saying, Did not the Lord bring us up from Egypt? But now the Lord has abandoned us and given us into the hand of Midian. And the Lord looked at him and said, Go in your strength and deliver Israel from the hand of Midian. Have I not sent you? And he said to him, O Lord, how shall I deliver Israel? Behold, my family is the least in Manasseh, and I am the youngest of my father's house. And here he is chosen as the one who is going to save Israel. And I want to skip to the 7th chapter. Here we have this unlikely hero, unlikely leader, with an unlikely victory. He's assembled all these warriors, these soldiers, to go out and fight against Midian. And, starting with the 2nd verse of chapter 7, the Lord said to Gideon, The people who are with you are too many for me to give Midian into their hands, lest Israel become boastful, saying, My own power has delivered me. Now therefore come, proclaim in the hearing of the people, saying, Whoever is afraid and trembling, let him return and depart from Mount Gilead. So 22,000 people returned, but 10,000 remained. Then the Lord said to Gideon, The people are still too many. Bring them down to the water, and I will test them for you there. Therefore it shall be that he of whom I say to you, This one shall go with you, he shall go with you. But everyone whom I say to you, This one shall not go with you, he shall not go. So he brought the people down to the water, and the Lord said to Gideon, You shall separate everyone who laps the water with his tongue as a dog laps, as well as everyone who kneels to drink. Now the number of those who lapped, putting their hand to their mouth, was 300 men, but all the rest of the people kneeled to drink water. And the Lord said to Gideon, I will deliver you with the 300 men who lapped, and will give the Midianites into your hands. So let all the other people go, each man to his home. So not only do we have this unlikely leader, we have too many people. Bring it down to 300. There are thousands of Midianites. And of course, they defeat them through the hand of God. And then David. In 1 Samuel, 16th chapter, the Lord again appearing to Samuel says that we need a new king, and he's going to have Samuel choose the one who will be anointed. So starting in the first verse of chapter 16, "Now the Lord said to Samuel, How long will you grieve over Saul, since I have rejected him from being king over Israel? Fill your horn with oil and go. I will send you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have selected a king for myself among his sons." But Samuel said, "How can I go? When Saul hears of it, he will kill me." And the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you, and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. And you shall invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do, and you shall anoint for me the one whom I designate to you." So Samuel did what the Lord said, and came to Bethlehem. And the elders of the city came trembling to meet him, and said, "Do you come in peace?" And he said, "In peace. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." He also consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. Then it came about, when they entered, that he looked at Eliab and thought, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before him." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look at his appearance or at the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For God sees not as man sees. For man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." Then Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Next Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, but Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen these." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are these all the children?" And he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and behold, he's tending the sheep." Then Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down until he comes here." So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy, with beautiful eyes and a handsome appearance. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is he." Not the biggest and strongest, not the oldest, but the youngest, and apparently the weakest. And of course, he turned out to be the great king of Israel. And then Paul certainly would be classified as an unlikely leader because, as we know, he persecuted the followers of Jesus. And he talks about this. Of course, we know the story in the book of Acts. But in Galatians, in this letter to Galatians, Paul refers back to this. In the first chapter of Galatians, starting with the 11th verse. And this is Paul again writing, "For I would have you know, brethren, that the gospel which was preached to me is not according to man. For I neither received it from man, nor was I taught it, but I received it through a revelation of Jesus Christ. For you have heard of my former manner of life in Judaism, how I used to persecute the church of God beyond measure and tried to destroy it. And I was advancing in Judaism beyond many of my contemporaries among my countrymen, being more extremely zealous for my ancestral traditions. But when he who had set me apart, even from my mother's womb, and called me through his grace, was pleased to reveal his Son to me, that I might preach him among the Gentiles, I did not immediately consult with flesh and blood, nor did I go up to Jerusalem to those who were apostles before me, but I went away to Arabia, and returned once more to Damascus. Then 3 years later I went up to Jerusalem to become acquainted with Cephas, and stayed with him 15 days. But I did not see any of the other apostles except James, the Lord's brother. Now in what I am writing to you, I assure you before God that I am not lying. Then I went into the regions of Syria and Cilicia, and I was still unknown by sight to the churches of Judea, which were in Christ, but only they kept hearing, "He who once persecuted us is now preaching the faith which he once tried to destroy." And they were glorifying God because of me. Now there's a lot more examples that we could cite, both Old Testament and New Testament. That's just a handful of them, because these unlikely leaders we have just numerous examples of. So again, the theme is God is in control, and he controls events as well as who are his leaders. For example, Jesus' resurrection. The Romans were a very powerful nation, and they, through the crucifixion of Jesus, they thought, well, let's put down this particular cult that's developing here. We don't want them around because they might be harmful to Rome. So they crucified him. Well, of course we know God resurrected him. And his followers, of course, after the crucifixion were disheartened, fearful, gone into hiding, until they saw the resurrected Jesus. And then it all changed. And Christianity, of course, grew in the Roman Empire despite all kinds of persecution, and of course ultimately became the official religion of Rome, because God, not the Romans, was in control. Another example, Judaism. Even though they rejected Jesus, they're still God's chosen people, and they have survived through the centuries against all kinds of persecution, and still exist as a people. Come on here. There we go. Pagan kings often defeated Israel in various places, and it's all, of course, told in the Bible, which is interesting too, because we read that history is written by the winners, and of course the kings who defeated Israel don't talk about their defeats, but they have these mammoth monuments that tell about their great victories, including victories over Israel. But in the Bible, we hear, of course, of the defeats of Israel because of not following God, because of worshiping idols, and God has allowed someone else to defeat them. And in these kings, in these monuments, they'll often brag about how they won because their God is better than the God of Israel. Well, of course, those kingdoms are long gone, and their gods no longer exist, are totally forgotten by, except for historians. Other than that, we wouldn't even know that they ever existed. But of course, God, the God we worship, is still worshipped. God is still in control. This thing kind of reminds me of a poem by Shelley, Ozymandias, and I'd like to read that. I met a traveler from an antique land who said, "Two vast and trunkless legs of stone stand in the desert. Near them on the sand, half sunk, a shattered visage lies, whose frown and wrinkled lip and sneer of cold command tell that its sculptor well those passions read which yet survive, stamped on those lifeless things, the hand that mocked them and the heart that fed. And on the pedestal, these words appear. My name is Ozymandias, King of Kings. Look on my works, ye mighty, and despair. Nothing beside remains. Round the decay of that colossal wreck, boundless and bare, the lone and level sands stretch far away. Another example of the God in control of events, the reestablishment of the State of Israel, 1947, which was what most people thought could never happen again, that there would be a renewal of the State of Israel. And of course, the Six-Day War. Israel then and today is surrounded by nations that are much larger in area and in population, much more powerful. And little Israel, in 6 days, defeated these mighty nations that surround them. How did they do that? Well, God had to be in control. And just how little Israel really is, this is something I used in the Wednesday night about 3 weeks ago, but let's take a look at how big Israel is. Here's the state of Missouri. There's how big Israel is compared to the state of Missouri. Until you've been there, you don't realize really how tiny the place is. It's really, for example, from Jerusalem over to the coast is about 50 miles. And Jerusalem is in the eastern side of Israel. It's another 20 miles or so to the eastern border, to the Jordan River. So it's really a small, small country. And yet, through the hand of God, it defeated these massive armies that surrounded it. Well, bringing it up to a more personal level, our conference, General Conference, is pretty small compared to most other denominations. I looked in the World Almanac and see here we have 1 million and more of one denomination and a couple million of another and however many more hundreds of thousands of another. And well, compared to us, that's pretty big. We're a small group. I don't know exactly how many because I couldn't find that. We're too small, I guess, for the almanac to list it because I couldn't find any statistics in there. They listed some churches of God, but they're different ones, Anderson, Indiana, and things, so not our group. But, again, if we have the truth, then size doesn't matter because, as Paul said, if God is for us, who can be against us?